Again, this is me being the athlete, right? It's like, I want to be the dominant player. When you think of sports investing, you think Vestible. That's what I've always wanted. That's the vision that we have. And hopefully we would have done a couple of $1 billion transactions at that point.
We are live here with another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. We have an exciting guest today. We'll be diving into a hot topic in the sports industry today with sports investing, sports as an asset class. And for decades, we've kind of seen it play out in a few different avenues, buying teams, owning franchises, and it's drastically changing and shifting, worlds nowadays. And now we have Parker Graham joining us with the company Vestible, and we're going to dive into kind of what they're building and how they're growing the sector. And thanks for joining us today, Parker.
Con, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to chat. Sports is obviously just going crazy right now with all the college stuff and the professional stuff going on, so happy to be here.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're going to touch on a lot of those things. And I think a lot of it is, too, kind of the model and what the system looked like and how it's changing, with private equity entering sports. And like you said, college sports especially is in an evolving landscape more than a lot of the others. And so kind of just to kick us off, where is kind of the problem, quote unquote problem, that you see in the sector, or how Vestible is kind of, addressing this, the issue or problem, or how are you phrasing it?
Yeah, I mean, the problem that really we're solving is just getting more investors into the marketplace and getting deals done faster. I've been in this space for about 4 years now. We've done all kinds of different products and ideas, building out what sports investing can look like for our company. And really where we've landed is right now to do a sports deal, to do what I would say like a high-level sports deal, you really have two problems. Number one, if you're an investor, finding the right sports deal is really difficult. It sounds counterintuitive because sports are so publicized and we talk about them in the media all the time. But in reality, to get access into some of these deals is really difficult. You have to know the right person. You got to have the right money. You got to have the ability to, if you're trying to buy a full team, have the ability to actually operate in that team or find an operator. There's just all these different hurdles that make it a much different investment than just say like buying commercial real estate, buying a property to flip, or buying a stock. On the flip side of that, being a team and trying to find the right investors is equally as difficult. You've got folks that will literally just flat out lie to you and tell you that they have money and they don't, and you don't realize that until like the 11th hour. And then you have folks that just don't fit from a cultural perspective. Maybe you're doing a minority investment versus a majority investment, and trying to find the right folks to blend on the cap table is really difficult. And so we've been in the space again for 4 years, and we've really found this opportunity to really be the marketplace for sports investing. So when a buyer is trying to find a sports team, we can help them do that process much quicker. And then for a seller trying to sell a sports team or sports adjacent kind of property, whether it's real estate or some other esoteric thing, we can help find buyers faster. And so that's really where we kind of see ourselves in this ecosystem and the problems that we're attacking. But there's millions of problems to go solve in the space. It's just one of the many that we're trying to tackle.
Right. Yeah, I like it. And I think kind of alluding that too is, you mentioned, the company being around for a few years here, but the quote unquote sports as an asset class, I think has really picked up steam, probably, I guess, in that same time period. And so what do you think kind of has been, burning that fire there with sports becoming this institutional asset class?
Yeah, I think there's two big movements. Number one is AI. So the democratization of really software in general, right? Like you can build anything now when it comes to software. And forever, software was kind of the one space where you had to have expertise. You had to be able to build a team. You had to be able to do all these things in tandem to build a really big company. Make movies, it can make music, it can do all these things, make companies, it can operate autonomously. The one place where AI can't go and change the underlying theme of the industry is sports. Humans have to play it, and human emotions involved in it from a fan base perspective, and the outcome's not known. And that right there, I think, that big piece of kind of like this anti-AI, play. This is the place where AI can't go and solve the problems that we see, right? It's humans, which is huge. And I think that it's kind of one of the last spaces that humanity is involved in. I mean, think about every single corner of the world. You have a sports team that's present. Doesn't matter if you're in America or India or Australia or even like the most random places in the world have their own version of sports. So it's something that not only is addressed by AI and antithesis to what AI does, but then it's also like a connectivity play. There's very few spaces right now where we as humans connect in person. And that in real life event space, which sports is just so much a part of, that to me is really, what's pushed it to be such a radical space right now. And to your point, it's really happened like the last 4 years, really, since we've been in existence.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect timing there, and obviously with, I guess problems or things that go wrong in the sector, obviously leads to the people being trying to create new companies and new asset classes and new objects and things like that. And so it's a good sector to be in. And kind of going off when you're talking international sports and just international teams and things, where do you see kind of maybe an underlying or underestimated kind of investment opportunity in sports? I guess internationally we'll start, and then you can say something in the U.S. if you'd like to.
Yeah, so valuations in sports, obviously with it being in such a hot sector, there's definitely a bubble forming. There's like with anything, when a massive amount of money piles into one space, a bubble naturally forms. So it's happening there too. It's happening in AI. It's happening here. It'll happen again in other industries. It's just kind of sports' turn. So when that's happening, you got to find where the value's at. And I truly think that the value in sports right now is not U.S. based. I think the value is actually in Europe. The top of the English market, the top of the Spanish market. So we're talking about, Premier League, and we're talking about La Liga. Those two are very, very expensive right now. So I would say kind of middle tiers in England specifically are a huge value buy right now, depending upon the team that you can get. I think really Italy, in my opinion, is a great market to be in right now from an undervalued perspective. But international soccer to me is just it's the world sport. It's the one that has so much more application, even than our football is what we love here in America. But in reality, it pales in comparison to what international soccer is. So I think that, if it were me, if I had, $1 billion today, like that's where I would be putting my money in, is international soccer. I wouldn't be buying just in one sector. I'd be buying in a couple of different countries, and spreading my risk and spreading my ability to grow across those geos.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And I think, especially with the World Cup too, that, always kind of brings it back full circle, puts soccer back on the stage. I think in the States too, as kind of puts back in perspective. But I was curious, kind of as you guys, have been building up the team and the company and the marketplace, what are some of the first things that you realize that need to get done in the space, as far as kind of putting this platform together and getting all the organizations and things like that involved?
Yeah, honestly, I think we did it wrong to start. We really had this vision originally of building a public marketplace, a public access point to invest in sports. And while I think that still needs to exist, I think we were just too early. And somebody else is probably going to tackle that, or we'll get to it in a couple of years. But really what we noticed by building that public marketplace was, wow, okay, we got a lot of interest from the private markets. And that's actually why we pivoted. We wanted to be in the public space, but there was just so much private market dollars that were trying to flow into these clubs that we were building relationships with. And all these clubs wanted to raise more and more capital with the investors that we had access to. So we kind of woke up one day and we're like, okay, well, we want to build this securities platform that's more public facing, but all of our investors are getting much, much bigger, like bigger check sizes. The deals we were doing were just too small for them. And then on the other side, we were getting access to more and more allocations into bigger and bigger sports deals. So it was like we were matching outside of our platform, and it was like, okay, well, let's not be dumb here. Let's remove the platform, the part of the platform that's just not working, and go and service what we're seeing, which is connecting these buyers and sellers at scale. And so that's really, we solved the pain point that we were experiencing ourselves and what we saw that was formulating in the market. And I think also, it's just all relationships. It's building relationships, being in the rooms with the right people. We're very blessed to have incredible partners, and those partners have opened doors for us that, some of them we really probably even shouldn't have been in because of the technology that we had just didn't service that market, but we still got in anyways. So it's definitely growing very quickly, and more money's flowing into it. For us specifically, we went from about 100 million in deal flow with our securities platform to about like 6 billion, almost 7 billion plus in about 6 weeks with our new one. So it's like it's very clear the private space right now is where funds are trying to get into these transactions, but it's just, again, there's just a really low connectivity and not a lot of players kind of filling the connectivity role in the sector.
And so then, obviously, with the listeners of yours listening, is you private people, obviously the markets, and then but then also organizations get involved. So who are kind of all the players that can get involved and kind of participate in the Investable?
Yeah, well, traditionally to buy a sports team, you had to be a billionaire. And that was pretty
Okay.
much it. That was kind of the ticket was you had to be a billionaire or you had to have a very big private equity firm. And both of those groups have been really successful. I think now, where we're kind of working is kind of down market from that. So we definitely do have some billionaires that we're working with, but even the last 5 years, wealth has just completely changed, right? Like there's just so much more money at the top of the market than there was even 5 years ago after or right after COVID. Um, so really our big, customer profile on the buy side, it's a lot of private equity firms that are now getting into the space. There's some hedge funds, a lot of high net worth individuals. So think individuals that are with net worths of 100 million to a billion. And then, partners that are kind of all over that stack, right? That's really who we're servicing on the investor side. And on the team side, it's literally every single league you could think of in the big five over in Europe. And then here in the States, it's the big four. So it's NBA, MLS, MLB. We really don't have any NFL exposure, and there's a myriad of reasons why. People can read as to what the NFL has done to kind of prevent or really control who gets to invest in those clubs. But that's kind of where we're spending the most of our time right now. We're working on other industries as well, like F1, sale GP. There's a couple of specific asset classes that some of our buyers want to get into, and so we're trying to figure out what those relationships could look like.
Right, right, and it kind of leads perfectly into one of the questions I was interested in getting your thoughts on. Is kind of these emerging leagues, and one of them was sale GP, and then we have different. I guess I put the UFL, the XFL, I put them in there as well as kind of these emerging leagues in the space. And kind of, are you seeing investors interested in those more as they're I guess kind of getting more prevalent, I would say, or are they kind of shying away because now there's so many where which one should we pick type of thing?
I think it depends on the investor. Some investors love early stage stuff. Some investors love more risk averse stuff. So it just really depends. But from my perspective, I think there's a lot of leagues that are going to have some staying power. I think there's a lot of leagues that don't. If you look at it's funny. These things kind of repeat themselves, right? So in the .com boom, you had a .com for every kind of company you could possibly think of, and only a few survived. Same thing's going to happen here. All this money's flooding into the space. You have all this private equity and venture capital money flooding into the space, trying to find their winners. Fast forward 5 years, a lot of those companies are going to die. A lot of those sports are going to die. People who invested in those sports they're going to lose their money.
Yeah.
And so for me, I really try to toe the line of even if an investor is telling me they want to go look for something, if it doesn't make sense, like I'm not going to put it in front of them. And there are definitely some emerging sports deals that I've not brought to people just because I don't really know what's going to happen with it. There's only so many eyeballs. Like while sports and the money behind sports has increased in a tremendous amount, the viewership is still 330 million people here in America, and you have to make those assets really compelling to watch and build a fan base, and it's very expensive. And when the LA Dodgers are spending X amount of money to keep and retain their fans, if you're an LA based other emerging sports team, it's really hard to get those fans to stop paying for their Dodgers tickets and bring them over to your sport. So again, it's not a doom and gloom type of thought. It's just you got to be really careful with the ones that you're picking because somebody's going to lose, and a lot of them are going to be the emerging leagues. You just got to figure out which one's the winner.
Yeah, it's a great point, especially to the point of kind of the eyeballs and the viewership, as you mentioned. It's those are a lot of the key stats, right? Driving either the media rights deals or sponsorship sales, and at the end of the day, I mean, I guess you could do multiple screens in theory, but you're only going to be watching a few leagues, teams, etc. And so the more that get inundated in the sector, I think it'll be interesting to see those kind of where those all land, going forward in the sports space. And kind of on the entrepreneurship side of things, as you're a few years into building this, maybe more, or I guess we'll start there. Was this always something you had as far as being an entrepreneur? I know you had obviously playing professional football and had some other work in that neck of the woods, but is entrepreneur always kind of been on your forefront of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I've been building businesses since I was like probably 16. I didn't really know what an entrepreneur was. I just always had these ideas of ways to think about things, and Probably led me into, kind of being the athlete that I was. It was kind of like a coach on the field, knew every position, at least on my position group, which was the offensive line, knew every position, knew what we were supposed to do, knew every play. And, parlaying that into post-career work where I was working as a wealth manager, but trying to build little mini businesses within the wealth management firm. And then built a football training company. That was really my first company that made some pretty good money, and then got into tech. And so it's always been in my blood. And I think now, after doing this I've been building businesses, probably like real ones, for about 10 years now. You just can't unsee it, and I'll always be this way. You just can't unsee it. You see an industry, you see a gap, you see something that you want to go build, and especially now with AI, which we haven't talked about, how it's more of a drug for someone like me. You can spin up an idea and ship something within a week, within a couple of days, which is great. So this is not the original version, obviously, of what we set out to build, but I think the entrepreneurial spirit of pivoting and refining and refining and refining to eventually get to where you're supposed to be, is exactly what we've been trying to accomplish. And I think we've found a really special niche here where if we can dominate it and do really well, everybody wins. Investors win, teams win, and we win.
Great, great, and I love it. And speaking of that point, is everyone wins, and having investors obviously getting that validation through kind of that capital investment that you guys are kind of agreed to and are building upon. What does that kind of go? Where does that go in line with kind of the validation of Vestible, the product, what you're building to kind of get backed and kind of have that success there?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, the validation is like we just got to do a lot of deals. We have a platform, we have a process, we have a lot of partners, and so for me, it's just going deal to deal and making people happy, right? Having our clients be happy on both sides of the equation, and then building out as big of a platform as we possibly can. Because if you forward project, right, like sports doesn't have a whole lot of connective tissue from a technology perspective. It's a lot of backroom deals, specifically talking about sports team deals. And so building a transparent but also private platform to help facilitate these transactions in a really unique way. To me, that is where our space, if we are able to accomplish that task, it'll be a very, very large company, and we'll be kind of like this is a terrible, but it's like if we could build like the eBay for sports transactions, like that would be really, really powerful. Yeah, and I think it would be a triple win, right? Like everybody can win in that market. When you build a marketplace where a rising tide lifts all boats, I think you're in a good space to spend a lot of your time in.
Good point. Good point. Especially kind of alluding to the building the marketplace, the relationships. I know you have obviously you go through, or one of the communities you're in is PAC, and so what's that like with being the athlete, having the community? I guess all as being an entrepreneur too, but just in your personal life and having those communities.
Yeah, I think I've been very, very blessed not only with PAC and having a lot of exposure, being a former athlete, but also like business communities too. I'm a part of Pipeline, which is this big Midwestern entrepreneurship group, and some of my biggest mentors are from that group. And I would not be in the seat that I'm in without folks that have kind of come before me, and I mean that in folks that have been there and done that both on the athlete side and on the entrepreneurship business side. The best thing about groups like PAC is more around, you just don't know what you don't know. And when you put a bunch of athletes and high achievers and folks that are really obsessed about winning in a room together, and they're all building different things, and some of it's applicable to what I'm doing, some of it's not. But when you put those people in a room together, that's really how you go faster, not only building your own business, but also helping others. I'm not a founder who's exited $1 billion company, right? So really, my time is the most valuable asset that I have. I have kids, and so spending time in those communities is something that I really enjoy because I'm able to give into those communities in a way that I can help others go faster, right? And learning from the mistakes that I made. So those communities are extremely important. I think any entrepreneur out there who's trying to do it by themselves that's just a zero-sum game. Like every company that's ever been built has been a team effort, whether it's the team internal or the team external for the executive group. And I always talk about being a founder is really, it's isolating a lot of times. And when you don't have a coach helping you see where your faults are, helping you understand your game film, right, in this arena, and helping you learn from their mistakes and learn from their experience. You do yourself a disservice. So that's really, in my opinion, why those groups are really important for me, and I know for a lot of others that are in my space.
Hmm. Yeah, great point there. And just touching a little bit on being an athlete and playing in college, as well as a little off topic, but still within the vein of sports investment and things, is just the evolution of college sports. I'd be curious where you think it's headed. Are we headed to a mega conference? Do you think private equities going to play more kind of in the college sandbox? Just to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so earlier this year, I said we would see about 5 private equity transactions in sports. We have 2 so far. So one is the Utah deal. LSU is about to reveal their private equity transaction. That'll be probably in a couple of days. I think that you're going to see a lot more of it. There's about 10 universities right now that have positioned themselves to take on private equity, and I don't think that's going to slow down. I think a lot of the times it's probably not a good decision. I don't know if I've seen a transaction yet where I thought, oh, this is a really smart use of money or a really smart way to attack some of the financial gaps that are out there. I think there's better alternatives. The problem that you have right now is you have college athletic departments being ran by non-business people talking to business people that are typically some of the best business people in America and in the world in some instances. And when you do that, you get convinced to do things that are typically not in your best interest. And private equity innately has to have the other side be a loser.
Yep.
So that the private equity firm can get the alpha, right? So, or the alpha that they need to make their fund returns. And so it's a very interesting spot to be in. I have a lot of thoughts that I would share over beers versus on a public podcast. But I think that's a good starting point. And then secondarily to that is what's going to happen with the legislation. So the Protect College Sports Act that Senator Cruz is putting in place seems like it's going to get passed. I don't know what the odds are right now on Kalshi, but I would say they're probably pretty high that it gets passed. And once that gets passed, now you're talking about restrictions happening for private equity groups. You're talking about restrictions on the super leagues. So I think we're in a world where if there's this federal, exemption that occurs with that bill, we probably would shift a little bit more back towards the old school college sports that we know and love. If that doesn't get passed, I would say you're going to see a huge acceleration into what Utah, LSU, and others are going to have to do just to survive.
Just to stay in the game, essentially.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Right. And then as far as kind of moving forward, obviously you and the team made a pivot recently and continue to build and grow. But where do you kind of see Vestible in 5 years as you continue to grow and build out?
Yeah, I think in 5 years you're going to see us hopefully having done hundreds of M&A transactions, hopefully hundreds, if not more. I think again, this is me being the athlete, right? It's like I want to be the dominant player. When you think of sports investing, you think Vestible. That's what I've always wanted. That's the vision that we have, and hopefully we would have done a couple of $1 billion transactions at that point, hopefully we would have done a couple of $1 billion transactions at that point. When you think about the players that are in this space of sports investing, there's not a whole lot of names that people really would know off the top of their head. And I think it's created this opportunity and ecosystem play where if someone can build this big privacy and trust layer to get these transactions done, they'll be a household name. And that's really where we're hyper focused and laser focused at, providing the best, really the best solution for, again, a buyer trying to buy a team or a seller trying to sell a team. And if we can accomplish that, we'll be really happy.
Got it. Yeah, we'll be on the lookout for that. And where can the listeners? You got socials, website? How do people get involved? Athletes, investors, all the above.
Yeah, so because we are a private marketplace, we're typically working with accredited investors. So if anybody is interested in buying into professional sports teams, just go to our website, fill out hey, I would love to become an investor on the platform. If you're selling a club, same thing. We are typically working with clubs that are what I would say are mid to upper market opportunities. So we typically don't work with upstart leagues, very rarely, I would say. But really to follow us, it's funny, we were doing a ton of Instagram and a ton of TikToks, and and even starting like some YouTube stuff. But when we made the pivot, we really went dark and focused in on what we were trying to build out. And now we're going to start coming out of that darkness and telling the world kind of about what we're doing now. Our first couple of deals are actually closing right now, so we're going to use a lot of that as the marketing pieces of it. So again, go to our website, get signed up, subscribe there. And then, pay attention on the Instagram, because that's where the majority of our news and updates and stuff is going to be happening at.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll send everyone there and keep our eyes there. And we have a few more questions. We have some fan questions that people piled in here. And we have, you kind of already answered it a little bit, but if you had $50 million, where would you invest and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. 50 million is a good number, because you can invest in a minority stake, or you could buy a whole club. I would say for me, right now, if I had 50, I would probably buy my own club. I would probably focus in on an English club. So you're talking probably a champion, you're probably talking about a League One club, which is tier 3, up to like a bottom of the championship league. Maybe you can get that. But that's where I would focus my money at. I love English football, the mechanics of it, the way people make money in it. It is just a fascinating investment. And there's just so many amazing clubs with amazing stories. How many places can you go where a club is literally like 100+ years old?
Yeah,
Like that to me is just the coolest thing. And when a baby is born in those regions, in those towns, it's born with a jersey on. You don't even have to go buy it. It's just born with a jersey on, right? And it's like it prints new fans every single day. And that's probably the coolest part and the coolest difference about investing there versus investing here. Because if you're investing in a startup league here, you got to go earn those people, right? Over there, they're already coming prepackaged.
Come with a birth certificate and a jersey.
That's it. That's 100% right. Yeah. And I think also the cool part about those investments as well is there's not a whole lot of mixed use real estate attached to stadiums yet. So if you're here in the States and you've been to the Battery in Atlanta, or if you've been to the Ballpark Village in St. Louis, or the stuff that's around a lot of stadiums here, then that's continuing to be built out here in the States, that doesn't exist there. And so you can get a lot of land attached to these club purchases where you can build out, pubs and restaurants and different mixed use retail around these stadiums to make them 365 venues. And I think that's where a lot of my money would be going towards, is buying a team and then doing some additive stuff on the stadium to make it more profitable earlier.
Got it. Yeah, smart move there. And then we have, would you rather, or who's your favorite founder and or entrepreneur?
Yeah. This is gonna be controversial, I'm sure, but not controversial. Not controversial for me. I think the most impressive founder is Elon Musk. Like his ability to hyper focus. I don't even know how many companies now that he runs, and has in the billions and billions and billions of dollars of valuation. But I mean, he is one of the most inspiring individuals from a full founder story. If you've ever read his book about him and what he went through to get to where he's going, obviously he has his quirks, but that guy is the most impressive founder. I have a bunch of founders that are mentors of mine that no one would know, and those men and women are equally incredible in their own right. But as far as the number one guy, like who's on my Mount Rushmore, like that dude's pole position, Mount Rushmore for sure.
Yeah. What's one sports league you're on the lookout for?
Man, I think women's volleyball is probably the coolest. I personally think out of all the emerging quote unquote sports leagues, I think women's volleyball is going to be the winner. It is the most, in my opinion, it is the best watch from a women's sports team perspective. People love women's soccer. I think women's volleyball is more entertaining. Just more's happening. It's just more's going on. I've been involved in my family's been involved in women's volleyball with my aunt for years. And it's always been a big affinity for us. My kids are really all the girls are playing volleyball. Volleyball is literally already, from an academy perspective and training perspective, it goes all the way down to 8 years old. Like it's just like a perfect system to go invest in. And so I think that league, I think here's a quote. I think whichever major volleyball league wins, because there's like 3 of them right now. If there's a consolidation, great, or if one ends up winning, I think that you're going to see that league be bigger than the WNBA. It's so much more entertaining to me than WNBA is. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
That's the one for me that, man, if that one would be a smart buy right now.
Perfect. It's a good way to close out, and then we appreciate you coming on the podcast today and telling us about your journey, Vestible, where you guys are going. And I like to kind of put you on the hot seat. I'll give you the floor here to close us out. Like I said, give you the floor here. Let us know what you think. What's next. Anything you got on your mind.
Yeah, Connor. Well, first off, man, I appreciate you letting me be here. I appreciate you. Anytime I can come out and tell our story about what we're building, it's just very humble, and I appreciate you asking me to come. First and foremost, if you're watching this, sports is probably pretty important to you. And I have to tell you that no matter how you can or where you can, getting some of your investment dollars into this ecosystem is going to be one of the smartest things you can do. Everybody talks about AI. AI is obviously everywhere. AI has a bubble that's forming, and AI is going to crash the market at some point. Don't know when it is. I'm not Michael Burry. I have no idea. What I can tell you is that from a staying power perspective, sports have always been here. Sports will always be here. And there are more and more access points to individuals to invest in sports. So whether you're able to invest in something through Vestible because you have the cash, or whether you're able to invest in some random startup that's in the ecosystem, take some shots, not to use sports as a pun, but get some shots on goal, putting some money behind this space, because there are going to be a lot of winners, and there's a lot of stuff to go build. So keep your eyes open, and don't be afraid to throw some cash down on this sector, because it's gonna just keep getting bigger and bigger.
Wonderful. It's a great way to close this out. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts again, Parker. And for the listeners and viewers, make sure to go check out Vestible. Subscribe. Stay tuned with some announcements they got coming up here pretty shortly. And we're looking forward to watching you guys build and grow. And thanks again. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Con. Appreciate it, man.